Okay, it is August 27th. It is 4:05 p.m. and it's bargaining session between Lake County Schools and LCEA. And good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Okay, so we're at the Lake County Education Office, so go ahead. I'll defer to you, Elizabeth.
Yes, thank you. So welcome everyone. Thank y'all for being here today. So we talked about logistics before in terms of the color coding. We don't have any color coding issues today because we didn't counter anything yet from the previous session. But you will see on our proposal italicized language, and there's a key at the top. So I think moving forward, just having that key, like bringing this, like we talked about.
Okay,
So you'll see that at the top. The key italicized just means we switched something.
okay,
So the language is the same, just moved it.
okay.
I think everyone on our team is the same. There should be nobody new that hasn't introduced themselves. And then Lisa Bell will be joining us as she comes in, she'll sit here, and so she'll be part of our team as well. Think that's it. Anything that I missed about logistics? You've been working great, getting us the minutes. Can't think about anything.
I have a couple of team members out, but I mean, it happens.
Yes,
Yeah.
we understand, but we've been starting, I mean, what is it, the third? Is it the third week already? Yeah. Tomorrow. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is MOUs from Lake County Schools, so you have a few MOUs for us?
Yes. And I'll have Jess go ahead and give you the MOUs. And today, the first one we're bringing up is the Title I and critical shortage. That affects 18 schools, about 992 teachers out of 2,811. Those are numbers based out of August 12th data file when we first exported teachers into Skyward and payroll. And that, looking at Title I supplement last school year, it roughly paid a little bit over $500,000 to those teachers. And then the critical shortage is those positions identified, listed there. Before the MOU was put in a little paragraph with the positions. This time around, I just put them in a list going down and specified it. So it's the same ones from last school year. And that one critical shortage, and typically last year it paid out about a little bit over 250,000 for the ones teaching in those areas. No changes to the MOU. It's the same MOU from last school year.
So you changed the formatting to list out.
Correct. Correct.
And then you said, could you repeat, you said the Title I supplement costed out was how much?
The cost last year was approximately around a little bit over 500,000.
500,000.
Yeah, I'm just giving you an approximate amount because I will have to go get exactly what it was paid out. And then it affects 18 schools because it's Title I schools. It affects as far as the data as of August 12th, it affects 992 teachers out of 2,811. Now, those numbers have changed because every year, by a couple of weeks pass by, somebody resigns, somebody retires, somebody gets hired, position gets filled. So roughly, those are the numbers. Critical shortage was about 250,000 was paid out. That one, I don't have the number of teachers. But I can get that number.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful if you can, with the
That's
number of teachers that receive the critical shortage bonus. And you said the classifications or the positions that received it last year has not changed.
No,
Okay.
that did not change. I just specified more to be more clear, like where it says science. If you look at the old MOU, it said science, chemistry. This one I'm putting science, chemistry grades 9 through 12 because we got a lot of questions as to
Yeah, no,
chemistry.
this is great.
So I made it sure that algebra 1 was another one, so I made sure it said algebra 1 grades 9 through 12. So
You're doing clear as time. I appreciate that.
and I'll find out the numbers for critical shortage.
Now, unless I missed a bullet. Okay, I see it under CTE area.
Correct.
for aerospace technology
Yeah,
and
it's,
advanced manufacturing.
they're all there.
And did our actual critical shortage areas change at all? Like,
We did not change them, we kept them the same.
But did you look to see if there were certain areas?
The one main one that I looked, we always had it was CTE. So I contacted that department to review and they said that those are areas that they still consider the same as critical shortage.
But no other areas like intensive reading or any other ESC position?
ESC is always a critical shortage because we have a lot of allocations that are open, that are ESC. And speech and language, we're contracting out, so we still kept it there. Psychologists are the same. And always science and math are always key, areas, specifically algebra 1. So we kept them the same.
But no additional ESC lines, because I noticed the ESC is just specific to behavior support and intensive support or deaf or hard of hearing and visually impaired, so other ESC lines.
Correct.
Okay, we'll definitely look at this during caucus and make sure we can get this back to you.
Okay. The other one that I have is additional class period. That one has no change either. In lieu that we are still looking for teachers and it's been hard to fill. It specifically hits mostly middle and high for the most part. And trying to fill in a teacher, there's teachers that are volunteering, teaching through their planning time. So that's the purpose of this MOU. And actually, our teachers are the ones requesting, hey, can I teach my planning period and I'll get paid for my hourly rate during that time. In some cases, they want to do that the whole year. In some cases, we're still trying to hire because that drops the number of students per class. But some teachers do not mind. Some teachers like to have that extra period. By the way, I got you that number for critical shortage, 339 teachers last year.
Was this whole paragraph there before? I mean, I just.
Oh, no,
quickly-
that's okay. I'm sorry. The MOU is the same. What I did at the top, I went ahead and I had the board attorney recommend me that when I'm writing MOUs to start specifying language for the year. In that aspect, that it's be ratified by you, ratified by us, meaning we both are in agreement, and it's only standalone for that year.
Cause I see also something here, reference to section 447.
That's just referencing the statute, the section, that it is.
Cause that wasn't there before either.
It was
Oh,
not,
sorry.
it was not. It's, if you look at this, all it is referencing the statute based on both parties are in agreement that it's a standalone agreement. So,
Okay, cause I see that now on the title.
correct, on that one, same thing.
And it seems to be on the last MOU too. And that's elementary school teachers.
It's if they receive,
Five. Voluntarily accept
five or more students with a maximum of 7, then we go into paying. It's a little bit more difficult because typically they only do it for a day or two. Or the teacher's out. Hardly have ever seen one that takes 7 for the whole entire year. So I did not have, I will have to do some research on data to see if I had anybody at the elementary level do that. It was typically done maybe for a week or somebody out on FMLA for like a couple of weeks or something to that effect. But we have it out there just in case it happens.
All right, we'll look at that one. This as well.
The last MOU that I'm bringing today is transfer, donation, and sick leave. Again, nothing's changed in that MOU. I can give you data as of last year. And throughout the year, 17 employees requested donations. Out of the 17, 8 of them were instructional. So eight instructional staff members benefited out of this MOU. And the total hours used for all staff that this MOU was applied to, and it was a total of 1,709 hours. Now, this MOU goes with both unions because we put it together. So just to give you some information, this will be the same information I'll be giving the other bargaining unit.
And was there any consideration about putting this in contract language?
We talked about it and we thought about maybe doing it one more year before we put it in contract, but, we don't see a negative on it right now. And maybe one more year, because I believe this is year 2, correct?
Yes.
We were thinking of doing one more year, and again, if you still feel like you wanna put it in contract, I don't see, I don't see it as a negative. It will be having a committee and meet together and make sure that that's what we want to do, but it helped. It didn't, it was not in, it was not in a it was no negative impact because it only helps employees.
And none of the numbered bullet items here have changed.
Nothing there, other than the introduction, but it's just a standard introduction that it's the MOU for the year, that's all. I did not change none of the bullets changed. If anything had to change there, we would have to have a committee meeting.
So when you're talking with the attorney about 447-309, it does say specifically in there that both parties have to ratify it and that it's not binding until then. So
Correct.
typically, we've been using the date that it's signed. Because sometimes you need us to do like summer school MOU and it might not get ratified until the next contract cycle. So is it the date this is signed, you consider it binding, or are you literally saying you're not gonna start paying this wage until the full book is, the entire contract is ratified?
No, I'll do it from the day that it's signed without a problem. It's just, I will take it to the board just to get it ratified. So, it was just recommended language because apparently it has brought up.
I want you to get that in the notes, that it's the date that we signed the MOU.
Yeah, it will be the date that we signed it. I will take it to the board doc so that we have it ratified. Because it was brought up by another bargaining unit that districts around were not ratifying MOUs as they should.
It does happen in places, and gentlemen's agreements only work until someone breaks them.
Somebody breaks them,
But
so
that's why I wanted clarification, is it you considering the date that the party signed the MOU, or are you considering it the date that we ratified the full book before it goes into
No.
effect?
that's the day that we signed the MOU. That's the intent of it.
Otherwise, we'd be running a lot of red tape.
Correct. And the day that I signed it, we go with it, this will be along with the contract when we will ratify it, but it's already signed.
Well, a great example of that would be Eustis Heights, if we do an MOU for Eustis Heights.
Correct.
Because they're already being offered. a
Correct. And I do not have that MOU
Okay,
because Mr. Fellner is still reviewing it with the staff in the school and I'm waiting on a decision on their side to tell me what's a recommendation as far as to bring you an MOU, but it's coming. Okay, it's coming. And I believe Mr. Fellner had expressed that
Yes.
at a meeting.
what about the peer mentor?
That's also being reviewed.
Okay.
Lincoln Park is also being reviewed and night school is being reviewed. But night school, they're paying the same rate, nothing's changing there. And Lincoln Park, they're looking at the schedule to make sure it's correct.
Were there any other MOUs that we flat out, I mean?
No, that was it. That's pretty much all of them. At least talk to you about all of them, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. But I'm bringing those 3 that were ready. If someone cares.
Okay, thank you. We now have some questions for discussion. So, obviously we've had some discussion about this and we're hoping that eventually we can get to a resolution. I do have Angela here today to talk a little bit about Article 2 and 25, the waiver language, and we did speak about speaking with a lawyer to try to get some clarity on that.
Yeah.
But Angela's gonna speak to that a little bit today.
He requested also, like, if you give me the questions you want me to ask him, he'll go ahead and I'll give you answers faster. So,
I don't need his answers, I need him to listen.
Want me to pass it?
Yep, that's for them, or you can have to go to them, I only printed just one for us and some for them. So Article 2 and Article 25. Are kind of linked together because Article 2 talks about the waiver in 25, and I just, if someone can pull up a copy of it, the waiver in 25. To me, this is language that must have been written in, back in the 80s. It looks very similar to things that I've seen in contracts in class, but for the most part. Zipper clauses have kind of fallen away. In the last 25 years, for a couple of reasons. We used to be able to do multiple year contracts. But the way the state legislature budgets anymore, they're always tweaking the numbers and moving things in and out of classifications and reducing the local property tax mill rates. That we don't have a consistent income like we used to be able to do. So zipper clauses close a contract and say, we've come to this 3-year agreement, this is closed, and that's what Article 25 says. In all of its crazy legalese, it's really saying that this is the sum and total of the agreement, and we're not reopening it unless both parties agree. All right, so an example, you guys just talked about how many MOUs? That zipper clause, a party could say, no, thank you. We don't want to reopen the contract. And so most contracts got rid of the zipper clauses. Then the state legislature did something that really makes the zipper clause obsolete. So in that same section that your lawyer was quoting in 447-309. So right after the section that talks about ratification and when things become effective, that whole paragraph says, if any provision of a collective bargaining agreement is in conflict with any law, ordinance, rule, regulation over which the chief executive officer has no mandatory power, the chief executive officer shall submit to the appropriate governmental body having a mandatory power to a proposed amendment to such law, ordinance, rule, regulation. However, unless and until such amendment is enacted or adopted and becomes effective, the conflicting provision of the collective bargaining agreement shall not become effective. So what's happened to us in the last 25 years, good example is teacher evaluation. For quite a few years, we were working on teacher evaluations. It was part of the contract. We had committees, there were things we did. And then they wrote a rule and says, this is now no longer subject to collective bargaining. You can no longer talk about the process of teacher evaluation. And they wrote that rule. So if we had a zipper clause, we would say, well, we're working on teacher evaluation. Doesn't matter that they wrote this new rule, our contract's in effect. But they broke our zipper clause when they made this change. So having a zipper clause is really antiquated and unnecessary, because if we don't reopen and fix the parts that they say are in conflict, we have problems. And none of us want to get called to Tallahassee to explain why we did what we did. So that's why we were suggesting removing the waiver, because it's just called the waiver, but it's not, it's a zipper clause. And I think that if everyone understands contract law, the statute overrides the contract. So you can leave it in there, doesn't matter if you want to leave it in Article 25, you can't use it. Literally, if they change the law, we have to fix the contract. That's it. So we were just suggesting coming into, the 21st century and saying, yeah, we know zipper clauses are outdated. But whether we remove it or not makes no difference, simply because the law will overrule any broken language. So just wanted to, you can take that back to him, and if he wants to give me a call, you can give him my phone number, and I'll be happy to say why we don't need antiquated language, because it's just confusing to people of what it actually means when you read it.
Okay, I
Put
understand.
it in GPT, it doesn't even know what it says.
There
I-
was, I'm sorry, go on.
No, go on.
I was just gonna say there was one other topic that we wanted to speak to the lawyer about that I forgot to put here.
Okay,
And that was in our grievance language about using the AAA, the American
Oh,
Arbitration Association
Yeah,
versus
American Arbitration.
FMCS. So
Yeah.
you wanna speak to the
Yeah, the reason that we're suggesting to people that have only FMCS in their contracts to change it and add the AAA or another entity if it becomes available. Because FMCS is through the Department of Labor. The Department of Labor's budget has been slashed hugely. And now I just saw a court ruling that said something about the NLRB, which is also the Department of Labor, is under attack. So if for any reason FMCS no longer can handle or offer any of its services and you don't have a backup plan, you're literally stuck. It doesn't say that you have to use AAA, it just says, hey, this one, or if another one becomes available. Because I have a feeling that what we're gonna be likely to see is governmental agencies being spun out into for-profit companies in some way, shape, or form. Like charter schools and private schools were spun out of public schools. That's kind of what I expect to see, whether that's at a Florida state level or a national level. But if you have a grievance process that you literally cannot take to arbitration because the only thing you have in there is FMCS, you're gonna have to now sit down and negotiate an MOU on a service to get an agreement on a service while you're waiting to process. So we were just making the suggestion to people that you might want to have options in case stuff goes sideways.
So as an option, you're looking at, instead of mentioning AAA, just putting or other agreeable by both parties entity that could.
That it's both parts, and there was, that we have this one that exists, and we have this private entity that exists, so there's a public entity, a private entity, and then the third line is, or any other mutually agreed upon service as it becomes available.
But would you consider not mentioning the private one, just putting or any other?
You're still gonna have to then have an agreement, the minute grievance is filed, you now have a secondary process where you're gonna have to go find an agency.
Correct.
Think you ought to go with one that exists?
So we would need some sort of SOP or procedures for how to identify an alternative.
The only one that's out there is AAA at this time. And if they close down FMCS, I fully expect to see a corporation pop up and do the same work. I just don't know what it'll be called or how it'll be worded. But as soon as we hear them, we'll let people know, but we're just trying to have people be proactive. And the cost differential in filing is really minimal. The actual cost of the arbitration is the cost of the arbitrator. And the arbitrator is the same in both. When I get lists from AAA and lists from FMCS, it's 80% the same people. And their rate of pay isn't any different. It's just the filing fee that's different. Filing fee for AAA is like $325, and for FMCS, last time I looked, it was under $100, but I can't remember it off the top of my head.
Generally, it's cheaper. That's what I
Well,
was
the
gonna
filing
do.
is cheaper, but the actual cost of the arbitration would be exactly the same. Because it's the cost per diem of the arbitrator, and they have the same resume in both places, it's the rates that they charge. And I've seen some arbitrators that put down that they wanted $5,000 a day. I go, let's strike that one from the list,
Correct.
we don't want that. But most of them are between like 1,500 and 2,500 per day. Well, it doesn't matter which service they're in, it's just you're gonna each save $200 by going with the federal service versus the private service.
So
We'll
obviously,
look into it.
okay, that sounds good.
Yeah.
And when we come back, because we don't have that to article
Correct.
today, Article 9, so. when we come
I'll have
back,
more
And I'll
information
be
about
happy to talk
that.
to your lawyer about it.
Okay,
Yes,
We
but
can set that up. Thank you, Angela. All right, so we have our initial proposal today for Article 11, so this is birthday and related matters, so the article will be coming around once everybody has it.
We need one more. Thank you very much.
Everybody get a copy? All right, so as I mentioned earlier, the key at the top, it says italicizes move the language, so you'll see a section where language is pretty much identical, just move. And so that's where that key is there. We're gonna start with section 1, joint leadership, so you'll see some changes here. Remember, joint leadership is an area that we've been trying to continue to improve and make sure that any issues or conversations about workload or curriculum planning, whatever the case may be, is through the joint leadership done at the site level. I think, Guido, you and I both agree that we've got a lot of work on our plates, and so if things can be handled at the work site level, that's ideal, right? It's ideal for everybody involved, including, our workload. So we want to make sure that we're honoring, some of the wishes of the superintendent and the discussion that I've had with her about joint leadership, as well as our employees, to make sure that their voice is included in their working conditions, because that is really, research shows, the number one reason why people leave. Obviously, salary is right up there with it, compensation, but voice in their working conditions and the quality of their working conditions is number one. And so we can solve some of those problems at the work site before they get to our office. We'd love to see that. So we've added some language here to represent some of those goals. So you'll see at the beginning, it says, instead of it being a minimum of once a quarter during the school year, we've added monthly, but no less than quarterly. It has been expressed by the superintendent that the ideal would be to meet monthly as you can with that joint leadership committee. We've also added that an LCA representative or designee, which is appointed by the LCA president or designee. We had a situation happen last year when we were making sure that joint leadership was occurring, where a principal actually appointed who they wanted to be the LCA designee. We want to make it very clear that it shouldn't be employees that determine who the LCA representative is on that committee, because they are supposed to represent the voice of their colleagues. Below, it says there will be an agenda that's jointly developed for all committee meetings. Again, like most business meetings for school board or any nonprofit that y'all are a part of, you'll see that the agendas are actually developed by the committee members and voted on by the committee members. So the full committee should get voice in the agenda of what's discussed at the joint leadership meetings. Minutes shall be taken. This was another piece. We're seeing a lot of inconsistency on whether or not minutes are even taken at these meetings, or they're not getting to us when we ask for the minutes. And so we want to make sure that minutes are being taken, and that it's not the responsibility of the LC representative. When I was a building rep, our principal designated our school secretary to take the minutes of those meetings. And we found that some of our reps would go to the principal and say, hey, do you have the minutes from the joint leadership meeting? And the principal would then say, well, can you give me your minutes? And I'll use your minutes. So it shouldn't be on the LCA representative to take minutes for the group. The minutes shall be also communicated to the employees, so we've added language that the minutes shall be emailed to all instructional staff. It was already in language that the minutes should be provided, should be available, so we've just cleaned up that language. And then also cleaned up that it should be within 2 business days after each meeting, so that way employees get the results of those conversations in a timely fashion. You see that we crossed off the word teacher, added instructional employee to follow the same formatting that we had before. And then we also included, this includes meetings after the end of the instructional contract year and before pre-planning for the upcoming year. There are some principals that do preparations for the previous or the following school year over the summer before pre-planning. I know I was included in some of those. Some of our leaders here today were included some of those pre-planning meetings to prepare for the school year. It's already in contract language that if it's outside of contract time, those employees are compensated for that time. So there's nothing preventing you having those meetings before contract or after. Okay, so that's section 1. Section 1A, extra student supervision. So we've just crossed off the word teacher and added instructional employee there about 5 times. And then you'll see at the very bottom, we've added instructional employees required to provide student supervision after the student instructional day will be given the opportunity for release time unless it is their scheduled equitable duty rotation. So we know that with buses and obviously the beginning of the school year, things are very difficult in making sure that kids are getting released and supervision is covered. Obviously, we know that and there's an understanding of that, but it's outside of that, initial first days or initial first week. That we really wanna make sure that educators' time is protected, just as it was prior to COVID and in the past. So we know that there are school leaders already doing this. We know that there are school leaders that have like a holding place, or they have certain staff that watch the remaining students that haven't left campus yet. Once the bell rings and they're still waiting on buses, they're still waiting on parent pickup, and then those employees submit for comp time. So this is already happening by some of our school leaders, so we wanna make sure that we honor that time and educators are receiving some additional comp time if they're having to stay to supervise students. All right, go to B. We'll see again, B, teacher is crossed out and an instructional employee is added, that's about 4 times there. And then again, in the next paragraph, 2 more times, and then we've added at the very bottom. Instructional employees shall not be required to return to campus after student and staff dismissal during an emergency or inclement weather situation. Any communication or directive to instructional employees to address on-campus duties must be communicated before dismissal. So Bobby, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
This was added because there were a couple of instances, I think particularly during, Milton, I think that was when this happened. Where, instructional employees and maybe even other employees received emails from administrators saying that they needed to return to school to unplug, the technology. And, a lot of them were already either on the way home or at home. And so we got some questions from people, do I have to do this? And a lot of people really felt like they were between a rock and a hard place because, they wanted to do what they were told, but they also wanted to take care of their families and really didn't want to drive in that windy weather back to the site.
So section C. We've got start and end times, so we've crossed out the language at the bottom there and added start and end times will not change once they are set each quarter. So originally, this language came about that was added for a vote was cases that we were hearing where with morning duties or afternoon duties. Certain groups of instructional employees who were on duty, their contract hours changed. And so that's where this voting language came from. But we realized with the rotation of duties, it could be that their start times could change by quarter or their end times could change by quarter with their quarterly duty rotation. So that's why we added the quarterly times for start and end time in contract. Planning period B.
Oh, hold on, give me a second.
Okay.
Okay,
So that is on page 3, carries over on page 3. So we've crossed off the word teacher and added instructional employee there twice. We also added the word prep rally next to assembly. We believe that assembly could also be under that category of prep rally, but we just wanted to make that clear because we know prep rallies are happening a lot, especially in our secondary. And then we added at the bottom, if alternative schedules reduce an instructional employee's scheduled planning period, this would be accounted for in the alternative schedule to give planning time back to the impacted instructional employee. So we know that there are some really excellent school leaders that are already doing this, that are having those joint committee meetings, looking at when testing is coming up, looking at when a prep rally is coming up, planning, especially if you're meeting monthly for those alternative schedules, and then creating a system in place for those that are impacted to get their planning time back. So we want to try to make sure that we're looking at that in the joint leadership. Section E, remediation. So I'll read the language for you, and then we'll speak to the reasoning behind this language. So we've added the word remediation to the intervention and acceleration time. We've also crossed off planning and as well as the intervention. And added remediation, comma, intervention, and then cross off the law. So it will start with new language of grade level standards within the master schedule. The Joint Leadership Committee shall review data quarterly and solicit input from the instructional employees regarding goals for remediation, intervention, and acceleration. The Joint Leadership Committee will have the autonomy to determine if there needs to be a block of time in the master schedule for this purpose. If there is a specific time in the master schedule for remediation, intervention, and acceleration, the time shall not exceed 30 minutes per instructional day and shall not be considered an additional instructional period. Instructional employees shall have autonomy and the primary authority over the implementation of remediation, intervention, and acceleration instruction during this time. No official lesson planning documentation should be required for the remediation, intervention, and acceleration time. No walkthroughs, observations, or evaluations, formal or informal, will be done during this period without the request of the instructional employee, since it is not a true additional instructional period. So, Louisa, you want to speak a little bit to the reasoning of this language and?
Yeah, so I'll start with adding remediation to the language. So if this is gonna be a time period that students are being supported, then we also need to recognize that remediation is one way to provide support to students. Typically, when you have a large group of students that require support because they're not meeting grade level standards, you would do this through remediation. Whereas intervention is typically done in a smaller group setting. So that's why we're proposing adding remediation to this time. We added that we took out the planning of this time for the Joint Leadership Committee because the primary purpose of this language is to bring autonomy back to teachers in the sense of we are experts in the classroom and we should have that control of being able to decide what support students should be provided with. So we took planning out to where the Joint Leadership Committee is only responsible for scheduling of this time and adding in the language if that block is necessary. So we know that best practice is to start with data, and if the data shows that it's necessary that a large group of our students need this support, then making that decision to add that block of time into the master schedule will be made by the Joint Leadership Committee, but with input from your instructional employees on what they are willing to how they're willing to approach what the data says. So the language that says instructional employees shall have autonomy and the primary authority over the implementation of remediation, intervention, and acceleration instruction. It has been years of collecting data on this particular time and how teachers are having to plan more while they're not required to provide a lesson plan. They are still doing the act of planning or prepping for this specific time with students, whether it's an actual instructional period or not. So really, at the end of the day, if teachers are responsible for the students in their classroom, they should also have buy-in in what support they are going to provide for their students during this time. If they're willing to implement, a walk-to intervention method, then they as a team with their data in hand should have that ability to make that decision. If they decide a walk-to is not going to be best for their students, then again, they have the authority or should have the authority and autonomy to be able to do that. No official, yes.
Just out of curiosity, no walkthroughs, observations, or evaluations will be done during this time. I get the observations and evaluations, right? Like I understand that. Help me understand why the walkthroughs though. Why can we not do walkthroughs and why is that on there?
So the original language in here has this intervention time not being an instructional period. So if it's not an instructional period, which correct me if I'm wrong, if it's not an instructional period, then the expectations that we have for teachers during their instructional time are going to be different.
But I just don't understand the why behind it. If I understand what you're saying, where you're saying it's not instructional time.
Right.
But if our job too is to coach and teachers want help, especially during intervention time, why write the language in there where we can't do walkthroughs?
Yeah, that's
So
a good
the-
question, Sid.
I-
There's actually language here that says if a teacher requests, the walkthrough can occur, so you're correct, if an educator wants support, they can ask for that support. But the concern is, if we're doing a walkthrough, we're collecting data on instructional practices. And it specifically says in here that's not an instructional period. So either we agree it's an instructional period or it's not. We can't have this in between.
So isn't there already language in the evaluation that states that you, unless it is something that is either applying or innovating, that you can't rate it during intervention time?
No, there's nothing that specifically says intervention.
So,
So,
hold,
go ahead.
hold on, Sid, hold on. Help me understand something. An administrator is responsible to oversee the instruction, safety, and everything that goes on in the campus. By you putting no walkthroughs, that means that administrator cannot even go into the classroom and just look and see if the teachers are actually remediating the students during that class.
Yes. So the term walkthrough is used because the district uses walkthroughs for when you're collecting data. So there's a Google form that you all use to collect data when you're going through a classroom. This isn't meeting the everyday person term of literally walking through a classroom,
Okay,
right?
so then,
So a principal has authority to walk their campus,
so then,
right?
when you say walkthrough, you're referring to the walkthrough evaluation and
Evaluation.
P and L. Is that what you're referring to?
We're talking about evaluation process as well as when the district is collecting data on instructional practices.
She's talking about the learning walk.
So you're talking about the
Right.
learning walk,
Tool.
Correct.
but I can tell my administrator to do a monitor walk.
Yeah, I mean, supervising your campus is your right as a school leader, right? Just like if you were gonna monitor bus duty or monitor lunch.
But you're restricting us from collecting data on what we see so that we can make better decisions as
So my
administrators.
question is this an instructional period or not?
What do you
My
call
question
it?
would be, what
What do you call
exactly
remedi-
would be happening in there? What are they doing? I mean, are they just sitting with kids and playing games?
So I guess that's our question, right? The way this language was initially developed and put in here, it said it was not an additional instructional period,
Correct.
right?
Because in-
We are not getting paid for extra time, we are not entering grades, we are not doing attendance.
They're not, right, they're not creating lesson plans for it. That's.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
They're not creating lesson plans, they're not running lesson plans for this block.
So,
Means what it
so
means.
then your question about what are they doing during that time period would just answer what you just said. If they're not lesson planning,
What do they do?
then I guess they can do what they decide to do, right? It's their autonomy.
Okay, just pause it there. Let's move on. Let's move on.
Pausing buttons.
Pause.
So I think this discussion, and I'm glad we're having this discussion because it needs to happen. It's been in place for 3 or 4 years. We keep circling around it. There's clearly some issues with this intervention concept in terms of reality and theory versus what's actually happening at the ground. And we've looked at all other district contracts. We cannot find another contract that even mentions intervention. So we are racking our brains just as you all are. We're frustrated just as you all are. We totally believe in remediation and intervention for our students, as Lisa shared. But how this is being implemented and how this is being done is not meeting what is a true intervention or what is a true remediation by research, by educational practices. Right now, we're just checking a box. So
I'm gonna enter, who's checking the box?
we're saying we have this time period,
Okay, I'm gonna say it is beneficial because.
which I never said it wasn't.
Okay, we've turned a school around from an F to a B because our intervention period is very strong.
So how-
Section, 30 minutes.
So you're saying
Well, and
thirty
we get
minutes
anywhere
is what
from
made your
40
school go from an A
I'm
from a
going
D
to-
to a B?
I'm going to say it was very instrumental because we use several different pieces in our instrument, or in our intervention. And to be quite honest, we don't call it intervention, it's your acceleration block. So you're accelerating all students. So to say that it's not an instructional period, I agree with you 100%. Yes, it is instructional because kids are learning, I hope so, during that time. So,
The teacher's not being accountable for it because they're not counted against their evaluation.
So the truth is, our educators wanna do the best job that they can. They want to meet the goals and the expectations put on by school leaders. They wanna do a great job. They are working incredibly hard, as you all know, right? The concern is, we're talking about additional workload without any additional consideration for that additional workload. We're not talking about additional planning time, we're talking about additional compensation for this additional workload that's been put on educators. And you're right, interventions and accelerations are essential and important, and a great educator is gonna do that regardless of whether or not you have a 30-minute block. And the truth is, we cannot undermine the amount of work and the hours that our educators put in for the other 7 hours a day or 6.5 hours a day and say the only reason our students are succeeding is because of that 30-minute block.
I think it's
That is
also,
devaluing all the other time and hours that our educators are putting in.
and I think it's also important to note that written in your language is you are asking them to plan and schedule this time. And the amount of hours that are spent by many school leaders taking that off the back of the teacher is tremendous amount of hours and time normally done by 1 or 2 people for 1,000 students. So then you add in 3,000 students. So
So.
Yeah, so I appreciate you sharing that, Brenda, because I know you've worked really hard with your school to try to take the workload off of your teachers, and you all have done a lot of work administratively and with your leadership team. So some of your instructional employees are helping prep materials for educators. Even so, those educators still have to spend time looking through those materials. They have to make sure that they're grouping those students appropriately. They have to schedule them in flex time or whatever program is being used. So there is additional time that's being taken, even when we try to take some of the planning off of educators' plates. And I want to give Lisa an opportunity to finish, because she was, kind of interrupted in her flow.
That's my fault, I apologize.
I mean, I think I was wrapping
Question,
up,
I didn't know
so-
it was gonna pull out like.
No, I
this,
appreciate it, because we need to have this robust conversation.
Yeah, it's a good conversation, I apologize.
Don't worry. I was almost finished, like it was an okay stopping point, but, so I wanna address the language that says instructional employees shall have autonomy and the primary authority over the implementation of remediation. So that is not, that's not requiring teachers to do it. That is saying if together, after they have visited or after they have looked at data and they decide, you know what? We don't think that walk 2 is gonna be the best for our grade level. Maybe we have a teacher that's not bought into it. They shouldn't have to do the walk 2 if that's not what's best for their grade level. This is more of saying, I am gonna sit here and say what I'm willing to do and what I'm not willing to do, so to say, to do what's best for my student. So if I'm implementing a walk 2 and I'm sending all my kids over here just so that we can make sure that this student has the best teacher for that 30 minutes of time, why can't I use my coaching resources to provide that teacher with what they need to be the best during their remediation, intervention, and acceleration time? We're trying to bring back voice and choice to teachers to do what they believe is best for the students to support them and what they need. Because the reality also is that we're sitting with grade level data that is showing that majority of our kids are not meeting grade level benchmarks. So that's not an intervention, remediation, acceleration issue. That's a core issue. So we need to spend our time and resources looking at core so that we can try to minimize the amount of time we need for intervention and acceleration. But we're putting a lot of time and resources into this specific time when that's not the problem. So this language is to give teachers voice to be able to say what they believe is best for their students.
can you clarify the statement about if the teacher chooses not to buy in?
That is it, when a teacher chooses not to buy in, we have to interrogate why. Okay,
Who's we?
the team. The whole PLT, right? We're all on the same team. If if I am presenting data that says we had this amount of students that were not proficient with this grade level benchmark, what are we willing to do to increase this percentage? Okay, that has to be the conversation. If a teacher is uncomfortable with transitioning their students from class A to class B, if a teacher is uncomfortable with putting their student in another teacher's classroom, there are reasons why teachers are not willing to do walk two. And walk two seems to be the one strategy that we use during this time. And it's also the one strategy that even though we don't require lesson plan documentation, we do still have to plan and prep. We have to plan what we're going to do during this time with these other students that I have. And now we're remediating or intervening on this specific skill in this room, this skill in this room, this skill in this room. That's three different lessons here that you have to plan and prepare for. If you're gonna be the most effective teacher you can during remediation, intervention, and acceleration, you have to plan for it.
And what would you do?
So-
So who's,
What would you do if it wasn't placed in front of you?
So my question then is, who is the one preparing for it to be placed in front of them?
well, you just said instructional influential have the autonomy, so I guess you guys.
Correct, but they get to say whether or not they're willing to do something in addition. So I'm gonna speak from the elementary level. If I'm an elementary teacher, I can have that additional 30 minutes to have 2 more rotations of my small group. So I'm still remediating and intervening, but I've already made small group lesson plans because I know my core responsibility is to plan my core instruction, plan my small groups. Okay, so now I've got my small groups, I know what I'm doing with these groups. That's already planned, but because that's not an extension to my small group, it's an additional time, that's an additional planning, right? So if I get to say, you know what, I wanna remediate my students and intervene on my students during this time in my small groups, I already have a plan of action in place. I'm not doing anything in addition, just rotating them. So we have to think about, so I'm gonna go back to the question, who's preparing the lessons to lay it in front of? Because if it's an instructional coach, I am also an instructional employee that has the same rights in this contract that now I'm preparing and I'm being taken away from my responsibilities as a coach to be in classrooms modeling, to sit with a teacher and plan with them, to pull an intervention group, because I also have to plan intervention groups to be able to take the load off of teachers and do the tier 2 or tier 3. Because that is required. Tier 2, tier 3 interventions are required. But if somebody else is doing the work that's also instructional, that is also additional planning. And it's taking away from the responsibilities that a coach plays.
But I think it still comes back to, you know, and I can't speak for every leader, but there's some fantastic leaders at this table that want the input from the classroom teacher because you are the content expert. Hey, you know, we understand that this is a standard that students might be weak in. What is your suggestion about it? That it is a collective approach, and then I think that it would be safe to say that the teachers that are in this room, that you guys are probably the strongest in your buildings. But that maybe not everybody has the same skill set that you do.
So I think that is gonna be the purpose of the language that we put at the beginning, where it says the joint leadership committee shall review data quarterly and solicit input from instructional employees regarding goals that can be put in place for remediation, intervention, and acceleration.
All right. We're probably gonna be talking about this
Yeah.
a lot more,
Ms. Wellen in her wisdom,
but
you're correct that there's a lot of differences between the levels, and we struggle with that too. We're like, how can we write language for all? Because it looks very different on your campus than it is on Brandon's and it
So-
looks at, Beverly Shores.
we will come back to this a later time because we're on letter E.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
I have one question though,
Yes, okay.
just because I wanna be clear. When it says no walkthroughs, observations or evaluations, formal or informal, we've done during this period, that just means evaluation purposes, correct?
Or learning walkthroughs,
So you also do not want learning walks to happen through this time.
correct?
And see, I beg to differ with that.
That's-
That'll ask.
Correct, I can,
Signed during this
So I-
meeting, you better put
Because
that in.
it says, it literally says, without the request.
Yeah.
So if an educator requests that, then that's fine. But either we need to say, it is an instructional period. Or it is, we can't do this halfway. Which is what it is right now.
to be discussed further.
Okay, thank you. All right, F. To modernize and adjust our language for the times, we crossed off development and included the word learning there. You'll see that in 2 places, in the heading and in the paragraph below. And then we've also added this language. Preliminary pre-planning schedules will be emailed to instructional staff by the last day of school. Pre-planning schedules will include the amount of individual self-directed planning time and lunchtime each day. Faculty and department meetings will not be scheduled to exceed 1/2 of the day. On days which students are not present, the duty-free lunch period will be 1 hour and will be included in the normal instructional employee workday. So the last 2 sentences there are already in contract. We've just moved it and duplicated it here to remind folks about pre-planning language, because I did have a situation this year where some of our school leaders did not allocate a full hour for lunch during pre-planning, even though students weren't on campus. And then we've also seen pre-planning schedules. A lot of our school leaders are really great about making sure that teachers have self-directed time in their classrooms to prepare. But then there are some pre-planning schedules that have been really tight on time. And so we want to make sure that the employees see, when can I plan in my room? When can I actually do the work in my room to prepare for the school year? So that's the intent of that language. All right. G, class size and the base load. So this carries out on page 4. So this is a new section that we've added. Joint Leadership Committee will make recommendations to ensure equitable class size and caseloads. High school core curriculum student roster for each instructional employee shall not exceed 150 students. Middle school core curriculum student roster for each instructional employee shall not exceed 125 students. Elementary school student roster for each instructional employee at pre-K to 3rd grade shall not exceed 18 students. Elementary school roster for each instructional employee at 4th to 5th grade shall not exceed 22 students. Elective and enrichment teachers must not be assigned more students per class than the facility can accommodate or than can be safely supervised. So this language and the numbers come directly from state statute about class size.
Can I ask the
It's class size average.
Okay, so when adding the word average,
No, I'm just letting you know, you can have a class of 160, but if the average of that particular class is average is 150, we're still meaning.
who has a one class of 160?
I'm just giving you an example. I can go with 3rd grade.
That'd be Joe. I'm sorry, line up.
My question, because it's the class size average based on, is it all classes, core classes? That's an actual clarifying question. And my secondary question is, you know, if there's an enrichment program that wants to grow their program and my teacher request says, I need all of these kids in
Yes.
my class. Because according to this, then the answer would be no.
So are you telling me that we have enrichment programs where they literally cannot fit another student in the?
No, I'm saying like a band room can hold 60 children.
Okay,
And
so
the
the
band
way,
teacher might say, I would really like my 50 bands, the flying twirlers and everybody together. Or maybe the football coach
Right.
might say, I want my whole entire football team.
absolutely,
But maybe I'm not reading it correctly, that it can't have these kids.
so this language does not limit that, it says, elective and enrichment teachers must not be assigned more students per class period than the facility can accommodate. Or than can be safely supervised.
Okay, so elective and enrichment, you can have as many kids that'll fit in the gym or fit in, right?
If that educator feels comfortable with that.
Speaking as the former band director,
The classrooms are designed to hold over 100 by, usually, I had a band of 125 on a block schedule at the end of the day. The medication wore off. And, it worked just fine. Back, our kind of band rooms here are designed, especially the high school and the new facilities around here, are designed to accommodate something of that size. That's why we hold the band festivals in schools. Yeah, that's not an issue.
Got a question for you.
Yeah, but I'll
Take
Sorry.
high school. AP classes.
Mhm.
Range for AP teachers that teach the same course, AP US history.
Mhm.
Those classes run 37 kids, 38 a load, and those teachers are not trying to turn away their dollars that they get as a bonus. Because they want their kids in the classroom. So we gotta be careful what we're doing and saying, because I can see where that could be a cut to their income.
So
You
I
know what I
would
mean?
be wrong, but my understanding is advanced placement courses is not.
They don't consider it core curriculum.
Right.
That's not.
This is only.
Yeah.
It's an elective
And
choice
to
of
speak to
kids.
the class averages, this is why we didn't say, you know, English teacher can only have 25 in class. Instead, we said 150, accounting for the average, because we know there are fluctuations in periods, right? Like I might have had a class of biology that was 18 and another class of 27. So we know that there can be a range in each class period, but it's more about the workload entirely on that one employee.
This, right now, we have teachers that have, 30, well, we have a teacher that has 31 more students than she had last year. And this is a high school teacher, 31 more students, that's like another class and a piece. And all the classes are full, this is not like, there's just one class that's big. So, we understand, and I've seen this, in other contracts, that there is a time, it's gonna take time for your adds and drops and schedule changes and that kind of thing, so this wouldn't be from day one when the rosters are formed, but maybe when we have those times when we're verifying our rosters or something like that.
Am I good to move on?
Yes, please.
All right, section 2 workday, you'll see teachers crossed out there about 4 or 5 times and instructional employee added. And then the article there to match the instructional employee. For section 2.2, again, teacher crossed out, the article adjusted and instructional employee added. And then we've added under the evening and weekend activities during the school year for no more than 3 hours at a time. Graduation will count as 2 evening events due to the hours, including commute time for off-site events and preparations, as well as the duties required. If graduation occurs on a holiday or a weekend, instructional employees will be paid 1.5 times their hourly rate. Such weekends and evening events should be academically based only. Instructional employees will be given the opportunity to select and sign up for which 3 required evening and weekend events of the instructional employees choice. So this language came about because there's supposed to be an increasing movement towards having weekend graduations and off-site graduations, which is an additional time out of an instructional employee's downtime, time with their family, when you're expecting them to do it on a weekend. And then I believe this past weekend, it was actually on a holiday weekend. It was a 3-day weekend, I want to say, for, I don't know, Memorial Day.
Yes.
So then teachers could not take vacation time with their family because they were required to attend that graduation. And then the other piece is graduations are extremely long, especially for some of our quite large schools. And so we're talking about quite a burden on the time of that employee and their family and their ability to take care of their kids and feed their family. So we believe that if graduations are occurring and they're more than 3 hours, that should count for 2 of the weekend events.
Give me some time too, but God help me if I have to sit for 1 for 3 hours.
Yeah,
I don't like my seven, how many kids an hour? It's not good to have.
That's usually enough.
Yeah, that is. You're 3 hours.
all right, so page 5. I'll read the language here and then David Lopez will speak a little bit to this. So you'll see instructional employees added there and teacher crossed out, as well as the article adjusted there. And then it says that who is required by a principal to attend a function will be entitled to mutually agree during the, again, instructional employee, teachers crossed out there. And that the, such as early release Wednesdays, teachers cross out, instructional employee is added there, and then instructional employee added again. And then you'll see at the bottom, it says, already in pre-existing language, that they will not be required to attend evening or weekend activities that are primarily designated as fundraising events, such as athletic ticket taking. Instructional staff will be given the opportunity to offer ticket taking duties at athletic or fundraising events with compensation of $20 per hour. Such instructional staff will be trained to handle money, see Article 10, teaching conditions, section 10, money collection. And then the sentence, instructional employees who agree to work more than 3 evening or weekend school opportunities will be paid their hourly rate. So the last sentence there is to account for any employees that want to step up and help with prom, or step up and help with the STEM night, or whatever the case may be. And then that language about ticket taking, this came up multiple times. We several years ago talked about some issues that came up where instructional employees were pressured to take tickets. It was then addressed by HR and the district. And then the next year at bargaining, it came up again. So we just want to make it really clear of the initial intent of that language and what was discussed 2 years ago in bargaining. And the $20 amount came about because I had several conversations with athletic directors from across the district, as well as our new district athletic director, whose name is escaping me at the moment. Yes. And I spoke with him about this as well, and all of them that I spoke to about this said this would not be unreasonable to use that $20 from the athletic accounts, not from the district general fund, but from athletic accounts to pay teachers for those additional hours, because we're asking them to handle money. And we're asking them to do this outside of their academic instructional duty. And a key part there is also the training, because we've heard of situations where teachers were literally just handed a cash of money and said, here, go do this, go hand out tickets. And there was no like SOPs or process, and they had no ability to make sure that they were protected. And we've also had cases where teachers were actually accused of stealing money, or there was a money handling issue. And so we don't want to have that type of issue happen either. So David, you want to add to that a little bit?
Yeah, one of the things that has come up, not only with me personally in my experiences, but other teachers that I have talked to across the district, is there seems to be practices all over the place across the district. There's no formalization of the process. And that's what we're trying to establish here. I know that at some schools, you're asked to participate in a couple of sessions per year. And then anything above and beyond that is compensated. And the rate that we have typically found is the $20 an hour. But another concern that was brought up to me by several of my colleagues and my teacher peers is the accountability component. Oftentimes they're handed a box, sometimes a cash box, but not always, because a lot of the payments are electronic. And they're told, collect tickets from this time to this time. And there's no accounting for what monies were collected, what monies were there when the box was handed to you. And oftentimes they're doing it by themselves. So there's the safety issue as well. What if there's a line of people and somebody claims to have given you a 20 and you gave them change for a 20 and then they actually gave you a 10? So those types of issues. So one of the things that we like to do is formalize these processes. Have it where people are trained. Have it where people are working maybe as a team. And that there's appropriate compensation. The money is there because you are collecting money for the athletic activity that's participating. Football is a big draw. Volleyball can be a big draw. Basketball can be a big draw. So that's our rationale.
So I think that, obviously we all have a different lens that we look through, but when I think about, say middle school sports, you are not going to have the same amount of traffic that you may have for a high school sport. Yet there's still the, onus on the school to pay for the officials and that sort of thing. So it's not like, you know, you might have $80 that comes in, but I'm gonna pay, you know, a teacher $60 for their 3 hours. So I think that that's worth thinking about. I do agree with you that like some uniformity would be helpful, I think, to everybody. And I think. I was gonna say, sorry, my other question is, you know, I can't speak for everybody, but I know that there are some adjustments that are made, to like a Wednesday morning meeting, right? So we may say, okay, we have 12 committees at our school that need to be, responsible for, and the teachers choose what they sign up for. So if a teacher chooses, because they like sports and they like being on the kids, they choose to be, you know, part of selling tickets or whatever, would that then eliminate them based on this language? Because we've traded a meeting for, you know, 10 months out of the year, and you were 2 sporting events instead of having 10 1-hour meetings. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Yeah.
And I think we're kind of speaking to the same thing. One of the things that has been problematic is that the teachers haven't had a choice. They've been told, you will take tickets. You will attend graduation. You will attend open house. And those choices are removed from the teacher. And for example, I'm in special ed. So I have attended several meetings specifically for the special ed population that are after school to accommodate parents. And regardless of whether I attended those, I was also required to take tickets. And that elimination of choice and focus on just the ticket taking, we find has been problematic. Not only in one school, in several schools. So what we're trying to do is formalize that. And as far as smaller events, I have worked at schools that have, at middle schools, across the district, other districts, where other people, boosters, parents, took tickets and helped out their sports, not teachers being required to take tickets. So that's what we're trying to formalize. Go on.
Seems to be good to have a standard operating procedure for this, because it would cover us and it would cover the district as well. If there have been issues in the past, with some elected teachers and everything, where money handling was an issue. It was a major issue, because there was no SOP, there was no definition, what is money handling, what could be allowed, what could not be allowed.
And what are the procedures?
And what are the procedures, having that would protect everybody.
And they should not be handing out any money bags. We have starting amount, our teachers know this bag, you gave me this bag with $300 in it to start. This is ticket number to start with, you put the ending ticket on there, but I know what you mean, they're just handing bags to,
And
we're
we're
not
trying to
explaining all of that.
formalize that and structure
And then
that
when it comes up short, then you're like, okay.
to protect all of us.
Basically,
Not always doesn't start with the same amount, because we worked some hot days, where sometimes it was 500, sometimes it was 800, sometimes.
just
So
standardize.
what we're trying to do is formalize it in contact language.
All right, can I move on? Yes. Okay. Section 3, the planning period. Oh, wait, I didn't do B, I'm sorry. So B, we crossed off teacher and added instructional employee twice there.
Topic question.
Yeah.
Do you wanna change the Roman numeral to a 10 from the top?
Are you talking about of the article or
Yeah.
where? Oh, yeah, absolutely. Okay, section 3, planning period. So we've crossed off teacher there and added the word instructional employee 4 times there. We've also added language at the bottom of that paragraph that says all instructional employees will receive no less than 180 minutes a week of self-directed individual planning time. In the next paragraph, you'll see teachers crossed out and instructional employees added. This is where that italicized note comes in. It was moved from the paragraph below C on the next page. So if you go to page 6. This language was below letter C on page 6. We just moved it because we felt like it made more sense. Below the first paragraph. But that language has not changed other than adding instructional inclusion.
Okay,
Page 6. Any school-wide deviation from this requirement that provides less than 45 minutes, so that was the same. We've added, will require a memorandum of understanding, so an MOU developed in conjunction with site administration, joint leadership committee, and the association. The MOU will then be ratified by and then it continues with the language we had before, a majority resolved from an anonymous vote. And then it continues with the second paragraph, we cross off, or a second section there, we cross off teachers and added instructional employees. And added that same language when it impacts only a particular team or department. So a memorandum of understanding, MOU, developed in conjunction with site administration, joint leadership committee, and the association. The MOU will then be ratified by and it continues on the previous language, a majority result from an anonymous vote. And then teachers cross out and instructional employees added. The next section, we've added student supervision to collaborative planning and other group meetings, and provisions of sub coverage may be scheduled as follows. So A, we've only added the word student supervision. B, we crossed off teacher and added instructional employee, and then added to existing language that said will be given an equivalent amount of time for individual planning on early release Wednesday to say within 2 work weeks or at a mutually agreed upon. C, cross off teacher and added instructional employees. You'll see that twice there. And then D is brand new. We crossed off the language there that was below D and actually incorporated it into D. So it says instructional employees are expected to attend IEP, parent conferences, MTSS, 504 meetings, etc., which was already essentially there in that language. And then it says if a 4th planning period in a week is impacted by these meetings and instructional employees are required to attend, the instructional employee must be compensated at the instructional employee's hourly rate. Below that, it says, existing language that said during state district testing. We've crossed out the word teacher and added instructional employee, and then added the sentence provisions for testing schedules will be determined by the joint leadership committee. If testing schedules reduce an instructional employee scheduled planning period, this would be accounted for in the alternative schedule to give planning time back to the impacted instructional employees. The last part on that page there, we've crossed off teachers and added instructional employee. And then we've added language. It was already in place here that said, that it's during a planning period, but will be compensated. And we just added the language at the instructional employee's hourly rate for planning outside.
stop, explain to me, what does it mean, provisions for testing schedules will be determined by the joint leadership committee?
Yeah, so I can work my way backwards on this if you want. So starting on that section, that is very similar to the same language that we already put in the section 1 of the joint leadership committee. Basically, again, saying if testing impacts planning periods, then that will be accounted for and there will be alternative schedules developed to account for that planning time that was taken away from a teacher. So for example, there are work sites that already do this. If you have a block of testing that happens early in the morning, so maybe it takes up your first, second, and third period, then maybe the next time you have testing, you do an alternative schedule, you flip your schedule to account for that too.
Okay.
So I'll work my way back up this page. So we've added the language in D to account for the additional meetings. We know that we're seeing an increase in student population that are IEP eligible or 504, we're attending more and more of those meetings. We understand that they are required, teachers should be attending those meetings. What we're trying to say is if for some reason it impacts the teacher's planning for a 4th time that week. So if they've had common planning once, maybe they've had common planning again, or they've had sub coverage. And now all of a sudden they're looking at an MTSS meeting, it's now their fourth planning period that was taken up then to provide some communication. We think this would be pretty rare, but we want to at least honor the fact that educators are getting that individual time to take. B, we've added the mutually agreed upon time just to make sure that teachers who are impacted by this have that communication with their school leader about when they're getting that time back. We want to make it clear, again, clear as time, right? So communicating to teachers and teachers communicating to their school leaders when that time is given back. We've added student supervision there because we've noticed that now teachers are being asked to supervise students at events or assemblies or pep rallies or whatever the case may be during the school day, during their planning period. So that's where that language comes in. The MOU language comes about because this was actually what past practice was. Before this language was added in the contract, which I want to say was maybe within the past 5 years or so with the previous leadership. That previous president, 2 presidents ago, for whatever reason, decided he didn't want to sign MOUs. He didn't want to be bothered with that extra paperwork. But we believe educators should have that information in front of them. They should be able to decide if they want that adjustment to their contract language and their contract rights, just like we would bargain any other contract rights. So that's where that MOU comes from.
Oh, okay. Give me a minute. Okay,
And then back on page 5, Bobby's gonna speak a little bit to that last sentence that was added to the first paragraph. That all instructional employees will receive no less than 80 minutes a week of self-correcting.
So we have instructional employees and our coaches and, SIP counselors, we have, some instructional employees that have maybe 1 or 2 classes, and then they're doing something that, I hate this term, non-load bearing, because I think they carry a pretty big load, but, they, rather than say they get 45 minutes a day, this isn't, this is so that they can have, can manage their time when they need to do the work that is their work that they need to do. These people have a lot of assignments, lunch duty, passing period duty. I can only speak to secondary because that's what I know right now in Lake County. And so, sometimes they need a block of time to do what they're doing. They maybe are planning, some professional development, that type of thing. So this way, they have at least this 180 minutes of self-directed time, planning time, like, a classroom teacher would have.
Okay. Section 4, school schedule. So I'll read this language, and if we want to speak to that again, we can. If you want to get into that again, but I think we covered it pretty clearly. But we removed, crossed out the word teacher there and added instructional employees. We've then added schools may instead of will, and then added the word a for time for intervention, and then added the word remediation. And then added the language, the Joint Leadership Committee will make recommendations regarding the scheduling of the intervention, remediation, acceleration block, see section 1E, and then we crossed out the language that was there before. And then we've added the word remediation there and crossed off grade level here. We've then added new language here below that says administrators should strive to keep the maximum number of preparations at 3 for secondary. Full-time secondary classroom instructional employees may not be involuntarily assigned more than 3 distinct preparations curricula during their teaching schedule. Instructional employees with more than 3 preps will be given justification for the assignments, and the instructional employee must agree to the assignments in writing. The instructional employee shall have the autonomy to select the common planning team they wish to work with each week. So we know with budgetary cuts and losing 125 instructional positions that we're gonna see more increased workload on educators. They're gonna have more preps, most likely. And so we just wanna make sure that they're provided with justification of why they might receive 5 preps or 4 preps. And then that, in that case, for example, you know, I taught biology and psychology, and I had multiple levels of that course. I might decide that I wanna meet with the biology team as opposed to social science, because that's the team that I really need more support on, so that's where that language comes from.
You do understand that you may have a high school teacher with more than 3 preps. AP. Yeah, because they want all those
Yeah,
stuff.
I believe I had 4 preps when I was teaching. So absolutely, and this does not prevent that. All this is saying is provide a justification for why. Have a conversation. Okay, section 5. Duty-free lunch, we did not change any language other than cross off teacher and add instructional employees. You'll see that as well for early dismissal. And then student early release, we've only adjusted and crossed off development there and add the word learning. And then you'll see added to the early release Wednesday, when there's 4 days instead of 5. That it says of that week will be used for individual self-directed planning.
Okay.
On the back page. Page 8. We've crossed off teacher twice and added instructional employees, and then section 8, we just crossed off teacher, fixed the article there and added instructor. And that concludes our proposal for article. And I do want to share this, I've shared this before, but I just want y'all to be aware again. This language never comes out of a vacuum. We make sure that it's committee driven, we have all levels look at it, all areas of instructional personnel look at it, and then we also look at other neighboring contracts. So we did compare contracts to this language. As I mentioned before, the intervention language was really frustrating because we could not find a single contract in the state of Florida that mentions the word intervention. We did find comparable contracts for a lot of the other language, which is why we put the language in here as we did about ticket taking and about the number of preps. That's all language pulled from other local contracts that either touch us or they have the same student size as us. All right, the next item on our agenda is budget and enrollment discussions. So we just kind of want to touch base to see where we're at, because I know last time we talked about budget. It's been gloom and doom, we've been talking about our enrollment numbers, obviously we're past the first couple weeks of school. So is there any update on our enrollment, what we're looking at?
We are less students,
Do we know how many?
more than the number that I said last time. But I don't know exactly that number because I have not had a meeting with senior staff yet to discuss that. So to give you an official number, I know it's higher than what I said.
Higher than what I said.
Hmm.
As in. We have more students,
No, less students.
less students.
Last week, I think it was about 300.
300, I think I said 300, but it's more. I think it's in the 4 digits, to be honest with you, so. But I will give you a better number when I actually see everything in front of me.
All right, that's interesting, because I met with the superintendent on Monday, and they were talking about the DMEs coming out, and I didn't see.
All right, it's going up and down.
So there's a lot of movement.
There's a lot of
What I'm
movement.
hearing, we have kids leaving and then coming back.
Correct, leaving and coming back, leaving and coming back, so that's why it's. As Mr. Ward said, the actual number that I would be able to speak to would be FTE, but. You know, the reports that I've seen on attendance and enrollment. Basically has shown a decline of enrollment. I have not seen it spike up. So it's hard for me to say that it's accurate to give you a number. So. And I wanna say. That's my opinion.
I got
Until I meet with senior staff and get the actual data in front of me, I won't speak to it. Okay,
Well, we did try to look at some numbers to try to see where we're sitting at and compare to last year's proposal. Obviously, last year's salary proposal was significant for instructional staff. I want to say it was $6 million or more. Our expert on spreadsheets and numbers is gonna talk a little bit about some of the
Experts.
numbers crunching he did.
go for it.
I forgot that for everybody, not if everyone cares how much for all.
We can share.
We can share it too.
You need any more?
No, we're good. They might need some though.
No need, no need.
So all these numbers were pulled from the record request, and last year you provided the spreadsheets that you used to cost out the salary proposal, so all those numbers came from that. Strictly, this is only filtered out for positions that came out of the general fund, so any federal funds were eliminated. So we can see in the first column, we have the count that was on 4/25/24. The second row, third row there was the number that was provided in, that you used to cost out last year, from like June 24th. We have the April 25 count, and then the most recent count that we asked for, which was 8/7. Then we have the number of teachers, the amount from the general fund. Then because the amount of teachers was changing, obviously that'd be challenging to look at, like how much does something actually cost, because if it's increasing with more teachers, then that would also go up. So I divided out to look at the average salary. So you can see that's the average salary, based on from the general funding on teachers. And then I wanted to see how did that increase, so it was proposed to be about a $6.2-ish million increase. So I took the general fund number that originally was, so that was 139 before the salary proposal. Added in the 6.2 to get the gen fund plus the increase, so I've been about 145.7 million. Divided that by the 2704 teachers to get that the average salary of a general funded teacher would be about $53,898.86. Then comparing that to the April 25th count, we had about 40 more teachers. That was the gen fund total. When I divided that out, I ended up with an average salary of $53,434. So it looks like there was about a $500 difference between what the proposal appeared to have cost, based on the numbers that we were looking at in June, to what it actually ended up looking like it did cost. For the average teacher side was cheaper. So when I did that on the far right, that was the difference between the proposed cost and that 500 times the 2,704 teachers, was a difference of about $1.3 million. That from this calculation, there was about so it'll be about a little less than $5 million for that $6 million original package back in June. So we don't have a proposal now. But one thing that I think we would like to ask is that spreadsheet last year I provided was extremely helpful because they had the IPS scores. Because I know that, the shifts and all that, in terms of the levels of highly effective and whatnot. So I don't know if you've already generated one for this year based on the IPS scores of last year, to help provide a better estimate and looking at numbers, like we did last year. So have that available, we would definitely request that, to be shared so we can more accurately cost out proposals.
Okay. I know Mr. Ward has started working on that portion of it, looking at numbers, so
I know it's obviously always a moving target, because
It's
that's
a
what I was,
moving target.
say, when I looked at, I'm like, wait, we have 40 more teachers, so wait, how, and then that's why I went everything to the average and looking at the difference in the averages. And then from August 7th, I guess about 2660 probably be basically returning teachers at that point, because, I mean, I guess a few new hires, but with the cuts, we can see that our average salary is actually $120 cheaper, than it was a few months ago.
812 had a higher count than what you have here. So,
Well, I'm saying, but in terms of like, well, that would include new hires that wouldn't get an increase in salary. So, like, because any new hire wouldn't get performance pay.
okay,
So obviously, we know we have some articles outstanding and I want to commend you, and your team for getting all those counters to us. We have a lot of work to do because it came all at once. So we're still working on getting those counters to bring forward to hopefully start TAing some more stuff there. So that's Article 4, 8, 9, 12, and 17, I believe. If I missed any, let me know. And then we also still need to do Article 10, so we'll be bringing that forward at our next meeting. That is the only outstanding article other than compensation, which would be appendix B.
B, C, and D.
And then I believe not the last session on August 20th, but the one prior to that, we were supposed to TA Article 1.
Correct.
And Jessica was making a correction, and then we were gonna print it, and you were like, no, just wait, and so I think we need to TA that, so I did make copies. If you wanna look at it and make sure there wasn't anything that needed to be fixed, that I missed.
Yeah, I don't mind TAing that one because I already said that I will, but for now, to let you know, future, I just wanna get them all and just have one day that we just find them all.
Big TA day.
Yep,
Okay.
so,
Why would you want to do?
I mean. That's what we typically do. Mr. Farnsworth has always signed them all together.
Well, if we had articles that were big and outlined, then yes, we signed a bunch of them at one time,
Correct,
but.
but that's typically what we've done.
But if
That's
we-
the only reason, no specific.
Been helping you guys for a couple of years and we haven't holding anything to the end because what happens is. You get all the way to get ready for ratification and realize no one has a copy. Cause you can't find it. So I always keep a list and I like to sign them as soon as possible, but you guys do you.
I've been with him now next to him, he hasn't signed them all at different times, so I can tell you what I've done with him, so.
Well, we do sign our MOUs.
That's the only thing that we have at several dates, so.
I like to feel like my checklist is completed, or we're getting things done. So if we come to an agreement on a certain article, I would love to sign it.
You know, if I can speak to that, what I have found is that when we do it we come to an agreement and we sign the temporary agreement, it's something that we can show progress. And that way, at the end, when we have the finalized contract, it's hard for most people, especially teachers that have a busy schedule, to read the entire contract. So if they read it in chunks, it's much easier for them to digest the progress that has been made. So that's one of the advantages that we feel to signing the TAs as we come to agreement.
Okay, and then the last thing I have on the agenda is dates for next meetings. I put 2 tentative dates there. September 10th and September 17th.
I'm not available the 17th and the 10th, can I get back to you on that one?
So we'll tentatively,
You can tentatively schedule the 10th, but I will confirm it, give me at least till tomorrow, to confirm it. Or actually, not tomorrow, because I have a meeting tomorrow, let me confirm Tuesday next week, when we get back from. Next week.
well, I think that's all we have. I do want to thank the school leaders for being here today and for the robust conversation. I know we can be quite passionate about the things that we care about, and at the end of the day, as long as our kids win, that's what matters. So I appreciate you all and your time and bringing your expertise to the table today.
Yeah, appreciate you too.
Anything else from your side?
It looks. Really cool. Oh, because he took the, no, she took the top portion. That's why.
So we're good?
He's in the zone.
Okay, I'm reviewing before I sign it.
Okay.
Because we want me to sign it, so.
No, absolutely.
And
Well, while he's doing that, I'll just make a general announcement to the room. Thank you all for being here. Please make sure you eat and got some snacks. We're gonna caucus and hang out, and I also have 3 Publix $100 gift cards to give away. So we're gonna give everybody a ticket to raffle them off, and then we also have lots of school supplies over here that will raffle off as well.
all right, let me officially. Okay. It is. Okay, it is 5:44, August 27. This concludes today's bargaining session.